Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Jnuary Folari. Well, first of all, my guests this morning, a couple of gentlemen, actually they're both economists, and to the extent that finance, economy, banking, that's some areas of their sort of interest and expertise. First of all, let me introduce Honorable Tunde Olatunji. Honorable Olatunji is of the Osun State House of Assembly. He's a finance and economy person and has been a banker for over a decade. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Good morning.
Honorable Olatunji.
Thank you.
And our dear friend, Dr. Austin Weze. He's a lecturer at I keep on saying Pan-Atlantic University. Thank you very much, Austin, for coming on, as always. Yeah. Austin regularly contributes on the economy and the polity, both on TV Continental and on, what has now become Max Radio. But you know where I am. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Let me kick off with you, if I could, Austin, because just looking through the press, we don't really find very much advisory from wealth or finance people locally. But I think the South African group, the Standard Chartered Bank, they're South African, right? I saw an article in the paper, and they say that their wealth management advisory predicts that there's going to be, shall we say, a development of the global economy, but it's going to be accompanied by rising inflation. Now, first of all, maybe I ask your opinion on that. Yes, a bunch of experts, they were wealth management advisory. Do you think that applies to us in Nigeria, or do we have peculiar circumstances? And we are going to be wanting to be developing our own economy ourselves. Grab hold of that, Austin.
Well, the prediction based on the recent oil prices. Mm-hmm. Oil price has gone up to 70. And if it continues to rise, it's predicted that Nigeria will grow, the GDP will grow by 2.5, 2.7%. But again, the government policy concerning the economy, what are the strategies they have in place? So, two things you can do. One, you can decide as a government to go on expansionary mode, in the sense that the interest rate has a way of influencing the entire economy. And when you lower the interest rate, cost of funds will be cheaper for businesses to borrow and expand their operations. And when that happens, more jobs will be created. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And more monies will be in the hands and pockets of the people. And then inflation will rise.
Because of that very fact,
yes,
that there's more money and
right.
jobs and more money in the hands of the people.
That's right. So when you have rising inflation like that, so what the government will do is, because if they do inflation targeting, which I totally disagree with their policy. When the economy we have huge unemployment, and even though inflation is rising. Now, domestic production, government should have a deliberate policy to increase domestic production, to make sure that most of the things we consume in Nigeria are made in Nigeria. If you go to some of these shops, over 70% are imported. Okay?
But things are changing, perhaps even in agriculture especially.
Yes.
There's the joke about people, our former suppliers of rice crying. It might be something of a joke, crying that, what's going on, Nigeria? Where are your orders
that
for
is just one item.
I know, it's just one.
One item. But again, you find that government, to checkmate the inflationary issue, they will, go on a contractionary mode by increasing interest rate, so that to squeeze out money in the system, mop up money in the system.
Okay.
That way, if inflation will also, so these are some of the this is they use in balancing the economy, make sure that,
Okay, let me bring Tunde in. Interesting, because this is something of an arcane area. We're talking the economy here and finance. And so actually, it's a delight that you guys are here to sort of explain it to us. Austin talked about interest rates. Now, Nigerian businessmen, as far as I can remember, as far back as I can remember, have always complained about the constricting nature of the interest rates here. That is to say, you can do very, very little because, first of all, you can't access funds because of the interest rate. So how is that going to work out? And Austin has just explained how you got plenty of money, jobs in the hands of people is going to lead to inflation. So explain that whole apparent contradiction. Know that it's not contradictory to economists, but let us hear it.
Well, I think it's not contradictory, like you said. You know, there's a research that shows that unhappiness when you have inflation is not as significant as when you don't have a job, which means there's a higher degree of unhappiness that is tied to unemployment than what is tied to not having a job. And that is a 45 years research between 1960 and 2005. So what we're simply saying is this: of course, there are two evils that can attack every economy, but it's better for people to get jobs and be able to still spend while you bring down your cost of inflation. So it's not really the best to be too mindful of inflation at the expense of job creation. And that is it. So when you look at the cost of funding at which our financial institution gets the fund and some other costs they need to incur in the cost of doing their business, then you understand why the cost at which is going out to the home lenders will have to be high. Don't forget that the banks, the commercial banks, they don't mint money. They will have to get from the public, and of course from that surplus sector they give out to the sector that really needs it. But again, is the fact that if you look at the cost of doing business in Nigeria, is a bit high, and also the fact that in recent years, in recent quarters, the government itself has been the major lender in the market. That in a way has actually crowded out some of the funds that would have been available for the other sectors.
Because the government also competes with the same funds
exactly
with the private sector.
With the private sector. So now you look at it that, and to an average bank who wants to just maximize return on any investment, it feels it's safer to give more money to government. It feels is a better way of creating assets that are risky, of course, but you can still be sure that your risk is minimal. Yes. The possibility of default is close to zero. And so, but again, it's very clear that that is not going to be sustainable, even on the part of government, as long as we have to go back to the market to raise funds, even to meet basic like salary payment at that rate. It shows that it's not sustainable. That model is not, and that's why the government is beginning to look at, can we get some other cheaper funds outside the country, and then we can have our local banks really face the core business of lending to the private sector and to some other Nigerians who are going to be in need. And we should not also forget that character is one of the major canons of lending. And so a number of times, I mean, even with my own experience, the kind of core values that drive our society also plays a role in the rate at which we get some of funds. How many of us are willing defaulters? If you look at how much you have with AMCON, trillions of naira of taxpayers' money tied on there, and so
it's not really the people's fault, because right from the word go, is arranged in such a way, the banks arrange it so that you don't even have opportunity to pay.
Well, I think I will disagree a little bit. I'm going to disagree a bit, and the reason why I'm going to disagree is this: we should understand that it is true. What you just said is not going to be totally true in all cases, and that's the point I'm going to. At times, in some of the terms, which of course can be a bit worrisome to someone who wants to trade getting money at some rate. I mean, so it will create the impression that it's like the facility is wired to fail ab initio. Yes. But again, there's also that of choice. Because there's something
They
part
don't have
of
they don't have a
part,
choice
no,
like
part
that.
of the
You're saying
duty.
money lending,
Part-
the
part-
money lender, the local money lender can be very, very expensive, but you're saying that there's the choice. You
But
don't,
that-
nobody
because-
forces
so
you. Is that what you're saying?
part of the duty of the bank is financial advice to their client, and that is very important. You know, we started talking about our banks just in the business of looking at how to make return on money. That is not the only duty of a bank, because you will agree with me that if you're going to do a business and you know that the return on this business is just going to be 10%, what sense does it make still lending to that client at 15%?
Oh,
Now,
left to banks,
Okay.
They will not lend to small businesses because it's not profitable to them. They rather lend to government because the risk is low. You know, they rather lend to national companies because the same amount of energy costs that you use in pursuing a small business like Jnuary and Sons Limited is the same, almost the same you use to pursue Shell and other big companies. But some banks do it out of patriotism, you know, because
So they're taking a hit.
a hit, yes,
Exactly.
They're taking
to
a
pursue,
hit.
yeah, to pursue credit. When they create such an asset,
and that is like going back to where I started. I said character is one of the very important canon of lending. And also because part of the
capacity.
When you say character, it's different from what the American calls credit rating.
Well, it's an integral part of it.
Yes.
Because
we don't have a credit bureau. We're supposed to have a credit bureau.
For instance, you can have all other criteria to assess fund, including capacity to pay. But if, for instance, you are a serial defaulter, if you don't have the integrity, you could take money and still afford not to. We've had instances of people who has a property that worth 50 million in the village, which is built by asset source of funding he cannot explain. And then, of course, he's running out of cash and he wants to just say, okay, let me technically say I'm selling this to the bank. And when you go after him, it's secured. I'm not saying in all cases, but for us to actually understand
so all these rules,
challenging globally.
All these rules can be doing our system. You just took that. You didn't say it's what happens every day.
Oh, not all the time.
But it's happening in there. So now I understand a bit better when you talked about the character. Or our sort of character is also important in this. We hear story of people who were willing and serial defaulters in complicity with the finance institutions themselves.
Including the character of the financial institution.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because there are so many cases of insider abuse.
Yes. There you go.
Which is responsible. So when we talk about character, that's why I said the other time, I said
insider
our
abuse,
value system.
Yeah, insider abuse is such that
as a country.
As a banker, you want a loan, Jnuary, he helps you facilitate it, and you give him his own share.
Yeah.
And but it's done in such a way that you're not expected to pay. You can't even pay. It's default. You definitely will default.
Oh,
because
it's like lending to yourself.
Yes.
And that person is also a stakeholder in the business.
Yes.
And we see people who would also...
Now, who's picking up the slack of those kind of rules? Who is suffering it ultimately? Because there's no free lunch. Somebody's paying somewhere, right?
Of course, that's why we are all feeling the heat. Nobody's paid. I mean, it's not, if you take, for instance, when some of these things happen, we would be wrong or myopic to think it only affects the banks that are concerned. It affects all of us. It affects the entire system. When banks, for instance, are not profitable, when banks are badly managed, then of course they begin to have problems. Workers are laid off. That adds to unemployment. A number of branches are closed. So you see a situation where some of our actions as an institution, as individuals, begins to come together and affect all of us collectively.
And the whole concept of AMCON taking this in absorbing some of those
toxic
assets to free up this for the economy. Now, the whole concept is such that AMCON is supposed to also open up so that entrepreneurs can make money out of it, but they are not opening up. Now, in US and Canada, for instance, where you have something like AMCON, you take it up. Entrepreneurs, like you can just go, okay, AMCON, let me buy some of these toxic assets and see if I can collect the money. So you have collecting agencies who will now pursue. If it is 1 million.
Like financial bounty hunters,
yes,
almost.
Yes. So you have 1 million you're owing. They can come and say, okay, they can buy it for maybe 50,000 from AMCON or 100,000 from AMCON. And they pursue the other. If you're able to pay in whatever they recover, you know, and people are making money out of it. It's a huge opportunity for people to make money. That was when what I expected AMCON to encourage entrepreneurs to become collection agents, you know? So set up collection agencies so that they'll be able to pursue this. And then a legal system that will, you know, help strengthen that up. Because if that is not happening, AMCON will just take up these toxic assets. And that's it, government as usual. I mean, the business as usual.
Guys, help me out a bit here. There was the cheering news that, oh, Nigeria has come out of its recession, and there was a lot of symbols, and, you know, it looked like, you see, we were in recession, now we've come out of it, we can only look upwards from here. I don't know, during the recession and when we've come out of the recession, I'm not too sure that the ordinary Nigerian, because at the end of the day, that's the base, the widest part of the pyramid, you know.
I'm happy you mentioned that.
So they don't know anything.
It doesn't, you know, anything that does not affect the common man positively on the street, you know. Now, the recession that
I got to hear from the Honorable because he's been speaking for quite a while.
Okay.
You know, so that would you like to take a stab at that particular question? That when economists talk about we've come out of recession, Mama Ngozi, Mama Mukaila, whoever, they knew what they were able to do before recession, in recession, and now out of recession. And I'm not too sure it's very, very significant. The indices might be, but practically.
Well, you know, it's a cherry news that our economy is out of recession. No doubt, we shouldn't put that aside. But it's also true that an average Nigerian is yet to really begin to feel the effect. And I want to, you know, describe recession just in this very simple way. It's like someone that's been in coma. Even coma, you know, the big job is the assignment is, can this person even come back to life first? And when the person is back to life, you can begin to say, how do we apply multivitamins? How does it begin to grow and all of that? Yes, we came out of recession in the second quarter of last year, and of course, yes, but the growth has been tepid. It's been weak.
Even the government has a growth plan.
And also now that you're out of recession, that's when you can begin to grow. And don't forget that we must return back to where we're coming from before we can. The growth that we have witnessed or that we have experienced is still less than 2%. That is low. That is not sufficient for us to begin to feel
to put it in perspective,
the impact.
Sorry, sir. Yeah. I'm very sorry for interrupting you. I wanted to put that 2% in perspective. Elsewhere, how high might it be? What are the highest growths that people notice, you know, around the world?
Well, we've had countries doing 10% well, China basically, and of course,
now that's great. If you can do 10% growth, that's something, right?
Even Ethiopia did well about 7% on the average. But you know,
so what are they doing that we are not able to do? I'm just
curious. If US, for instance, does 4%, is great for them.
Okay.
Because
it's all about how the size of your economy, and then is it developing or a developed economy?
So maybe 2% is what you're saying.
So that less than 2%, that's I think 1.4 in the third quarter. That's a mild, but you know there's something we also need to consider.
Like
prior to going into recession, we were doing 5. We're doing an average of 5%. So now we're no longer in coma. But you know, the question is our growth, and we must not also forget that in between this period of recession, something keeps growing, which is also a great challenge for the people that embody, and that's our population growth. If you're doing average population growth of 3% per annum, and then your economy was actually going down,
less than 2%.
And then by the time it's back, it's less than 2%. And UNICEF said the 1st of January, for instance, their own statistics, we gave back to 20,201 babies on the 1st of January alone, a single day. So which means in 10 days, you've actually increased your population with about well over 200,000. Well, there's also the indices of those who have equally passed that. But what I'm saying is, you know, our population growth rate is far more than the rate at which our economy is growing.
Yeah.
So on both sides, you can see that it's only going to be challenging. So and now, until the economy grows to that level, that an average man a common person on the street can begin to feel the impact on what is, and what was responsible for that growth is another point that we need to look at. It's largely because there's increase in production and price of crude oil. So you agree with me that it is still until the economy, yes, there's growth in the area of agriculture, manufacturing also had a boost, but it is not sufficient to meet the needs that we have as a people and the kind of growth that is expected for us to begin to feel the impact of the economy on our lives.
But the very population, the Nigerian population, just like China, I think China has 1 billion now. Anybody to be in business,
1.5.
You have to, as I hear people say, you have to be in China. There's no such thing as not being in China. Now, there's a sense in which Nigeria, too, our population is a strength, and businesses, whatever else they've heard about us, do not shy away from Nigeria. Why? Not so much because we're handsome, we're happy people, that might also be there, but it's because of the numbers.
Well, not only the numbers, alone. EU, European Union, yes. They are bigger than US.
One moment, please.
Yes.
Just hold that idea. I'll come back to it. EU bigger than the US. Yes. Mr. George, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Uncle Jnuary.
Thank you very much for calling in.
And good morning to your panelists.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Uncle Jnuary, it's interesting to note this warning. I'm concerned because of our past experiences. Oil is selling at about $70 per barrel today, and it is expected to rise in the course of time. You remember that in 2014 or so, the oil went to almost $120, and that was the beginning of the preparation for 2015 elections. You will also recall that most of the governors that cannot pay salaries today, it started from that time. They were using the money to prepare for elections, and it has now come to say that ability to pay salary is now a major achievement for a governor. But the president we have today is somebody that does not play around with money. Now that we are expecting more money from oil and we need to control inflation, my suggestion is that the chairman of the economic team, which is the vice president, this is the right time for him to begin to strategize with his team. Let the money not go into private pockets like he did. You see one minister with billions of dollars in her account. Let it be considered. Let the critical infrastructure of Nigeria that are decaying. This is the time for them to strategize on where this money will go when it comes. Not when it comes, we put it somewhere until somebody has stolen it. This is it's just an advice, I think, to consider now.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. Planning, right?
Yeah.
Planning.
Yeah.
Planning.
Now, I think I'll comment on that, but let me finish
EU-US.
Yeah, about the size of the economy. Now, the EU is bigger than the US, size-wise, population-wise. But the US market is bigger than EU. Why? Appetite to consume. US, the whole world is working for US. The US is using the world monies to consume, to take care of their, their heavy appetite. But the good news for the US is that they're also producing. Domestic production is also rising, which is different. Nigeria, we have huge appetite to consume. That's why Nigeria's market, not just the population,
but we're not
producing what we cannot produce. And we have appetite for what we are not producing.
Now that you use that particular example, you notice that in the US, you see foreign businesses moving production into the US when this thing is becoming too much. And
because Reagan made a policy when he was president, the late Ronald Reagan, sorry about that.
No problem.
With the Chinese, the Japanese especially, to increase their own business. Okay, you can only bring 600,000 cars per annum. But they said 600,000 is too small. The whole of Japan, they now went into strategic alliances with US car makers, which gave rise to the cars where we have to your beautiful car, Lexus that you drive, and all that. So those are some of the things that they
In fact,
did.
so much so that there are some models that are in the US, Toyota, for example,
Yes.
just taking one brand,
Yes.
that are not in Japan.
At all,
You know,
because
I
it's
think
for
the
the
Celica is like
market.
that, you know, that kind of a thing. But
It's also
it's
important to know that if you compare US and the, we can safely say that US is responsible for a quarter of the world wealth and the GDP.
Yes.
The GDP. So, but you know, the point remains this: if you have an asset and it's not properly managed or used, it can become a liability.
Productive.
Okay. One moment, please.
So when we talk, okay,
I'm going to come back to you because I know I interrupted something. Bond, as in money, but bond in Port Harcourt.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning, Bond.
Good morning.
Is it James Bond?
No. Isaac Bond.
Isaac Bond. You're very welcome.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, my name is Bond. I'm calling from Port Harcourt.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We'd like to hear what you want to say.
All right, please. Thank you very much. This program is really speaking the minds of Nigerians. One major problem we have in this country, sometimes I wonder if our leaders are ignorant of our problems. The truth is this. My honorable friend is talking about economic growth. That our population is growing faster than the economy. And that is not even the problem. The problem here is that the government has failed to put the necessary facilities on ground. I mean, I'm talking about the basic amenities. Because every common man on the street, Nigerians are hard workers. Now, they just want to do something on their own. But you look around you, there is nothing that encourages you to stand on your own. What we need is individuals to grow this economy. We don't need government. We need private investors, individuals to grow the economy. Now, if I'm doing something, you're doing something, and my other brother is doing something, we don't have to depend on the government. The economy will boom. But we don't have power. We don't have the necessary, basic amenities to do these things. So where are we going to start from?
Well, you'll agree, Mr. Bond, you'll agree that there are continuing efforts in power. We might not be anywhere near the promised land yet, but there is unceasing work on the whole matter of power.
Yes, thank you very much. But my problem is this. Right from the time of Obasanjo, can you hear me?
We can.
We have been on this power problem. What is the problem? And one of the basic things that we need to make this country work is power. We should start beating around the bush. Now, that is why I live in Nigeria, but my family live in the Manchester. I tell you something, you look at these two countries, you look at the UK, you look at the way they live, you look at, even if you don't have job, if you're jobless in the UK, you will still live fine. You will eat well. What is the problem about this country? That people are working and they are hungry. Even while you're working, you're hungry. What is the problem? Yeah. Since the time of Obasanjo, we've been trying to fix power. And there comes Jonathan, there comes the Yarapa, there comes now with the Buhari. We all think that this is going to be the end of the problem. But nothing is working. I mean, it's annoying.
All right then. Thank you very much, Mr. Bond. We take what you have said. Thank you very much for coming in. I interrupted you.
Well,
but you can understand the point of view of Mr. Bond.
I can feel Mr. Bond's passion. I understand where it's coming from. But I think I need to say this. I'm only saying that we would only see the impact as an average person when our growth is sufficient enough. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the major problem Nigeria has is population. But that's why I was saying that if you have an asset, our population is meant to be an asset.
Yeah.
But if it's not well harnessed or properly managed,
which
would
appear to be the case now.
Exactly.
You have kids in universities now.
It can become a liability. And that's the point I'm actually trying to make. And there's something that is critical we cannot beat about bush around it, and that is infrastructure. Infrastructure is key. There's a nexus between infrastructure and economic development.
Sure.
you take, for instance, Africa as a continent is a population of a little about a billion. And our entire GDP in 2016 is just about less than $1.5 trillion. And you take Germany, for instance, a population of below 100 million, as a matter of average of about 90 million, doing about 3.46, about $3.5 trillion in the same year. So you can, if you compare 90 million population, that's less than a tenth of the entire population of the. But there are some things that are different.
Okay, we're going to look into those. I've got to take a break now. Let's come back and thank you very much for staying with us. Join us very, very shortly.
Carefully planned out.
Welcome back. So we're having this conversation on really the economy, so to speak, and the problems with economic growth, especially as it's being predicted that it's going to come. You know, that's the outlook for 2018. But with inflation, which could then, if you don't handle it carefully, wipe out whatever gains have been made there. Now, the other point I remembered as we were going, following from Mr. Isaac Bond's call, was that, look, our kids here, one of the things he was sort of advocating. Our kids here, I think I remember one university, and maybe there are many more, Covenant University, it likes to release what it calls Eagles, that is their graduating students. We hope that they are not, they would like in an ideal case scenario not to go out there and become salary earners. If at all possible, they want a large portion of them to become owners, you know, employers of labor. In other words, start something along the lines of Mr. Bond. In the circumstance that you gentlemen have already described, I wonder how easy it's going to be for those young men and women.
Well, one is
to go out there,
without
having anybody in Abuja who is going to, you know, just going out there on your own intelligence.
When they get out there, they need to be mentored. Okay.
They need to
be mentored. They need to understand.
I was taking all of that for granted.
That assuming having been mentored,
having been mentored, the environment, the working environment.
Exactly. Let me say this. In anything that you do, one of the major components of manufacturing and all that, and every other thing that we do, is power. Power constitutes between 65 and 85% of manufacturing components.
So if we ain't fixed that, we have a long way to go.
You can't compete cost-wise.
One moment, let me bring in Divine. Divine has come on the line from Apapa, I believe. Good morning, Divine.
Yeah, good morning, Chief Jnuary.
Thank you. That's a new one. Thank you very much for calling in. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Chief Jnuary, I want to say that the issue of our economy depends on our hands. Yeah, can you hear me?
The issue of our economy is... What did you say?
Our economy depends on our hands. It's in our hands.
Oh, okay.
And in as much as we cannot do the right thing, we will always get it wrong.
Could you explain that?
I said our economy is in our hands. In as much we cannot do the right thing, we get it wrong. We don't empower.
Okay. We
don't empower the youth to do the things they are supposed to do. We don't empower. We don't have power. We don't have our laws are not even empower us to do the right thing. I don't know if you agree what I'm saying.
Yes. We heard you. We can get you.
Now, for example,
I think we're...
Look, Mr. Divine, I think you're listening to the echo, and that's giving us a problem. Just speak on, please.
Okay, because when the law has not been implemented, there's no way we...
Okay, sorry, Divine, I think because of the satellite, there's a delay whereupon you hear what you said earlier. Unfortunately, you're taking time to listen to the beautiful point you just finished making instead of just continuing. But see if you can get in again, and if you do, just speak on and ignore the echo. Now,
yes.
Who was I with? It's gotten. I was with
Okay,
you.
I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah. So the point is that, like he also mentioned, that we need to really look at, do some strategic thinking. Begin to build a economy based on the industries. Look at the different areas, where they have, the competency, competitive advantages within Nigeria. We begin to make policies. It's also about policy choices that we make. Now, first of all, if we are serious about building and industrializing Nigeria, we need to begin to look at have a raw material base. A raw material base, so that we build up enough raw material for our industries, so that transition will be smooth. Right now, we import our raw material, even what we can also develop within. What happens? China, for instance, any raw material that they cannot produce within, government buys. In fact, the Chinese imperialism is worse than Western imperialism. Yes, the Western imperialism tells you, ship your raw materials. We'll finish the goods there, send the finished goods. But the Chinese want to control the source of that raw material.
Is that how you're looking at China?
Yes.
What they are referring to as the Chinese incursion into Africa?
Exactly.
That's exactly what China is.
They control
doing,
the source
of the
of
raw
your.
material.
So you don't produce, you don't even have anything. They buy everything. Government buys and then subsidize for companies to be able to, companies buy from government at a rate to enable them produce at a cheaper rate to be able to compete out there.
But if the Chinese are getting away with that, then you can only blame the host government.
Yeah.
But before you go, sir, hold the thought. Let me bring in Akin from the UK, and then I'll come straight to you. Good morning, Akin in the UK.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Prof. and
Morning.
Honorable.
Good morning, my brother.
Thank you for calling in.
I'd just like to chip in one or two things concerning the topic on grant. There's an adage in economics that says that necessity is the mother of invention. And it's also apparent that any country that will develop must also have the manpower for economic development.
That's right.
Our production possibility frontier, Professor would understand what I'm talking about, is minimal compared to what is expected for economic growth. How do I mean by that? In terms of the level of economic development right now, technology seems to be the motivating factor for any economy to grow. Now, the biggest problem in Nigeria is that we are consumers of technology. We are not developers of technology. So that means that we only move at the pace of other people who develop technology, because we are not developing that technology ourselves. So one way is that we are stuck. If technology does not develop, we don't develop because we are consumers. Number two, the diversification program of this regime is out of place. I don't think they understand what it means to diversify. Agriculture is not what we need to diversify on, because we already have agriculture in place. What we have forgotten to do is that most of the economy, especially when we are talking about transitional periods, you find out that there's what you call the merchant class. It is the merchant class that has money, not the government. And if you don't give them the impetus to invest their money within an economy by putting policies in place, nothing will happen. They only use their money to import. Let me give you a typical example. There was a time when Dangote was a massive importer of sugar, of salt, of oil, and all those things. Now he has brought his money back to invest his money. How many people in his category who did those things are doing the same thing as he's doing? The only template that Dangote is using is because it is favorable to him. It might not be favorable to other people who have money. So when you have to also put that into consideration, your merchant class must be able to put their money within the economy and sit and develop the economy.
Thank you very much, Akin. Appreciate your call. Really appreciate your call. I saw that you were agreeing with some of the things that were...
Well, he made some very valid points, and I agree with those things he said. You know, I was going to say that it's not enough for, every country, every society must decide how he wants to develop. I mean, the Chinese model, we've talked about it. The Western world, their home model, we talked about. The questions are, what is our own model of development? There are things we call, they are building
he was
blocks.
talking about technology, for instance.
They are building blocks of every economy. There are things you need to put together for the economy to grow. It's not just going to be driven by sentiment or emotions. You have to be factual.
How important is the economy that he put in there? Because you don't need me to tell you that India, for example, when it comes to technology, you know, they're just going, you know.
We must also not forget that some of these things are as a result of careful planning and vision.
Okay.
Of years,
no, I said
rather than
about,
the visuals.
Yes. I started talking about having a raw material base. That's the planning. Say, okay, look, what do we need? Because until we become original equipment manufacturers, which the guy from UK talked about, you know, because the money is in those equipment. What do we need to produce? To make this beautiful suit, what do we need? We need the machine. Okay, we can buy, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. What the Asians used, the Hong Kong, the Malaysians, the Indians, is, you know, just a creative imitation. Why can't we use creative imitation? Buy all this equipment, break them down. What are universities for?
Which they say is what China did in the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning.
You know, Japan too. In the beginning,
those are the
buy radios, take it apart, and figure out how to put it back together better.
So everybody must decide the vision which is going to run. Okay. And these are years of planning.
Mazi Okoroafo, good morning.
Good morning, our guests in the studio.
Good morning.
You see, our guests, Nigeria is a country where the country specializes in consuming. That is talk about 70%. We specialize in consuming, then 30% into production. Now, how do you assess such a situation? If the opposite will serve, it is better for us. Now, you ask yourself, Nigerian elite, can they come into this Nigeria invest instead of running to other countries to invest? This is our major problem we are facing. Now, when we talk about China, I laugh when people, everything is capitalized China. Now, do you know that technology is something that you cannot transfer technology? There's no way. You can't transfer technology. Mr. Yori has said you're doing this job. Now, you see, it takes you pains to sit down, crack your brain. That is your own technology. To do what? To make sure you sell out this program to people. Now, that is our own technology aspect of what you're doing. So that is the problem that we cannot, yes, there's no way we can transfer that you stay. When these people come, I expect our people going down, walking around the people to steal. Follow that pattern they are doing that and see that technology, put into that, and come back their own and settle that and do that. That is how to move. Now, you look at there are other what we talk about environmental factors, economically, demography, socially, politics, and the rest. Name them. Now, what are these factors? Are we looking to them? It's not a question of we sell oil at 20 million per one barrel. At the end of the day, we will not see the usefulness of the money. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.
Thank you very much.
Even the oil, even the oil sector he mentioned. Sorry, please. The oil sector he mentioned. Just the oil sector he mentioned before, because he made a point there about oil. We are not playing deep into the oil. It's being controlled by foreigners. The technology, we are not even. We have to depend on the foreign to import this technology and all that. So we need to play deep in by, you know, manufacturing this. Nobody transfers anything. You have to.
Akin in the UK was saying he used, for example, Dangote started out how he started out famously, but now a lot of manufacturing is going on here. It's like, did you want to comment on that? He says that if more Nigerians, mega, super, ordinary, were doing that, things will be different. Do you buy into that?
You know, I talked about something. I said Nigerians naturally we're consumers, and we seem to be more interested in consuming even things we are not producing. It's not every Nigerian that is blessed can do what Dangote is doing, for instance. There are a lot of people who can afford to, but they would not just want to go into it because they believe if I can bring in goods and nobody's controlling what I'm bringing in and I can make my money in Egypt. How come, for instance, most of our financial institutions, the bulk of the money goes into funding on oil and gas? And then the oil and gas you're talking about is not even the value chain development of oil and gas.
So it goes back to what Austin said about planning, careful planning.
Exactly, that's why
You've got to plan the outcome that you want.
Every country must decide how it wants to develop. You must carefully design a master plan of how you want to achieve this. We've talked about all of these countries we are talking about. These are a result of years of careful planning.
Our leaders are short-term thinkers,
and we
just get over this, solve this problem now.
We shouldn't be living.
We should talk about something 10 years development plan.
50 years. When I was in Singapore, they were even asking 50 years from now. That was what the Prime Minister said, the former Prime Minister. 5-year-olds were calling in and saying that they're 5. What would be the kind of, what kind of country they will build for
when
them
they are 50?
When they're 50.
Akin in Abuja, good morning.
Good morning.
We're waiting for you.
Good morning, Oga Yori.
Hello, good morning, sir.
This morning. I think the problem we have in Nigeria is a failure of leadership. And we lost it after the Second Republic. Let me tell you, industrialization is not a rocket science. And I will give you a typical example. When Chief Adekunle Ajashi was a governor of Ondo State in the Second Republic, this man established more than 10 fledgling industry. We have glass, we have the premier mental industry, we have ceramic, we have Ekiti brick, we have Okitibaye palm. All these industries were doing well.
Where are those companies now?
And they came to destroy. The present day leadership, they are just like a Badilika thief that came to steal and to destroy. And I can assure you, since Baba Adekunle Ajashi left Ondo State, no governor has ever established one industry in that state. Emma Citizen is a politician. Ask them, since Akande left Osun State, they should make one industry they have established. So the challenge we have in Nigeria is that it's a problem of leadership. And not you can get it right. Our politicians are all the half from the system. They are not willing to add to the system.
Okay.
Good morning and God bless Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Akin in Abuja. So he's saying that we lack continuity in our policies, but he also threw a challenge.
Make a comment.
The question I was going to ask you, where are those companies today? Where are they? It's a fact that government has no business in business. Government is supposed to be an enabler. You're supposed to create the enabling environment. You're supposed to let people come up. It's not. So take for instance.
So that's the reason.
Take for instance in my state.
Things died.
Take for instance in my state. There's a cocoa processing industry that's been there for decades. The last time any meaningful activity happened in that particular factory until last year was over 10 years, because it was moribund. And what did we do? We know that it is not going to be, we cannot run it effectively. Experience has shown over the years. We brought in Chinese investors who are now partnered with the state, and that factory is back to life. They invested the money, and
so
we have
the money. We have the money, but we
a shareholder in that same industry.
Is that progress?
And this
is that progress?
No, you see, because you're not even a progress. One major mistake we make is this: we build some of those things, and we forget the software that we use to run them, and the software is the human capital. That's why there's no sustainability in all of this. You can build all the things that you want to build. What happens? Nobody to run it. When it breaks down, you have to bring in the people who supplied you the machine. So what should happen is that even as we're building all of this, we have to build the software, the human capital, to be able to. And what one of my friends is doing, he brought in the Chinese, they open up, set up the machine, and when it breaks down, they don't go. They find a local person to fabricate this thing. They don't depend on China. The guy wanted to buy a milk processing this in Germany. It was costing him over $40,000. And he said, okay, show the local fabricator here. The man looked at the picture, produced the same thing for less than 500,000 naira.
Kingsley in Ajah, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Please go ahead.
Good morning, Uncle Jnuary.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I've been following your program for a very long time. I think sorry, good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, fine. Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to contribute. My problem with the country, I've sat down to observe our country, their country, and I find out that we're just a share of so many other countries. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, fine. We're just a shade of so many other countries, so many other economies, so many things plays out in Nigeria. So we're just confused. We'll go today, we'll look like China. Tomorrow we're like Europe. Tomorrow we're looking like America.
Identity crisis.
Identity crisis. Definite structure, definite plan as a country, as a nation that we want to focus on and pursue. So today you're like a China economy, tomorrow you're looking like an American economy, tomorrow you want to look like Indonesia, then tomorrow you're looking like Taiwan. So I think we should have, as a country, we should have a focus on what this country stands for, what we want to do, a definite thing, then we'll build towards that area.
Okay.
We want to develop our technology, we train people, okay, this is the direction we want to go technology-wise. Then the government should put everything inside and develop technology. If you want to go agriculture, fine. Then you do this. This is not like today we're like China, tomorrow we're like Indonesia.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very, very much for calling in. Really appreciate your call. Now, we're running out of time. The development identity crisis. Is it true that we have that?
No, but yes, we do.
We really do.
We really do have a development identity.
We
don't know.
In our politics.
Okay.
In our politics.
Let me quickly.
In our politics, we have a crisis, identity crisis there. And that's why I keep...
Even in our politics?
In our politics, yes. So we need to have a homegrown, take care of our heritage. There are some industries that they go Smith, for instance, you know. So how do we improve? How can they improve it? There'll be thinkers. Any society that does not have a critical mass of thinkers and philosophers, it's difficult for that society to develop.
So ultimately, it's going to come back to this whole matter about our national orientation.
Yeah,
what is our national psyche? Well, do we think as Nigerians, is there a Nigerian way of thinking, which I'm not meaning it negatively? Yeah. Because that's what people are saying. One time you want to look like Singapore, the other time like China, the other time like US. Yeah, thank you. I understand what you're saying. Really, to close now, what do you, talking about the identity, the development identity crisis?
Well, I think as a country, as a people, we must decide where we want to be and what we need to look like. I mean, it's not enough for us to copy some other nation, and every nation should decide what it wants to become, and including what our economy should look like in years. And that's why we said the other time that it's going to be as a result of years of careful planning. And in the course of doing this, everybody must come together. And that's why our core value system is key, it's critical. When we talk about Nigeria, what already comes to mind? What do we want to become? What do we want to achieve? What are the things we need to put in place to achieve those things?
But that's what the economic think tanks are working on. There are economic think tanks, right?
Of course, and again, you know, we must also know that our infrastructure are key to some of these things.
Okay,
infrastructure are also as a result of years
I understand.
We're
going to squeeze in. There's a UK caller. Good morning.
Yeah, hi.
Tunde in the UK.
Yeah, my name is Tunde.
Tunde. Okay, yeah. Sorry, we know it as Tunde, but Tunde, go ahead.
Tunde, yeah. Okay. You see, the most important thing in business, right? You have to realize that a lot of the laws are made by these people in the National Assembly. And if none of them run a corporate business, they will not have an idea, or they will not make laws that will suit other people. That is the bottom line. Yeah. Because if those people run business, they will be able to put in motion rules, laws. You know, when we hear even foreigners coming into Nigeria...
Sorry, Tunde. Forgive me, Tunde. I got to let go of you now. We've completely run out of time, but you made the massive point that people in charge of laws that will regulate our conduct oftentimes don't know anything about that which they want to regulate.
That is the truth.
It's not
That's
even law
why
for us
we
to have
want people like
It's
you, who coming from your background from the private sector and all that, being there, making laws that are business friendly. We need a critical mass of people like you in the assemblies, state and federal. And
in addition to the laws we are going to make, which I agree are very important, because what a man does not have, he cannot give. Some of these things will
But somehow these people find themselves in the way of
So
power.
again, it's that when we make laws, we must also ensure that those laws are enforced. India has the most voluminous constitution in the world. Province of Monaco has the least, the smallest. You compare those two countries, you can see the difference. The same thing with Nigerians. We have a lot of laws that we have made and we are not enforcing. And that is also in the area of ensuring there is a good synergy between the lawmaking and the enforcement of law and executing those laws. So all of these things are the things that will come together, that will give us, and we must also...
Well, we have laws, but impunity goes side by side with those laws. You know.
Exactly.
So these are things for us to really worry ourselves about.
One senator was interrogating the former governor of Central Bank, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi. He said, explain why you said that the National Assembly consumed 25% of the budget. Even though he said, I don't understand budget. You see, how can a senator not understand budget?
And you're supposed to... the budget is a law.
It's a law.
So how do you make law? What you don't understand?
Yeah, but why are you guys saying this? You know how we do. You know how people arrive in our various assemblies completely bereft of the required knowledge to do the job. And again, you guys are saying what you're saying.
Not participating in politics.
And again, when you have a society where people are not interested in vision, they prefer the visuals. They don't know that it's the vision that will translate into vision.
I like that.
And when you see those who want to do the right thing by ensuring, without infrastructure, you cannot move like my state is doing. Put up infrastructure. Somebody will question, why would you want to spend so much on infrastructure? And because we believe that we must just survive on what we get from the federalism agreement that we have, which is not sustainable.
I explained that in my book.
Of course,
I explained that in my
book.
The
experience in my state has shown that within that space of time, what the infrastructure investment we have done instead of has been able to translate into economic development
the
and growth.
Economics of leadership.
Okay.
That the leader should be thinking the supply side.
Okay, we completely run out of time. Maybe let's just hold that leaders need to be thinking of what you refer to as the supply side of economics.
Yes.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I said it off camera before we started. This subject that we want to start today, you can talk about it for the next 3 days.
Of course.
But thank you very much, Honorable Tunde Olatunji, Osun State House of Assembly, and with it coming to us this morning, more with his background in finance and economy and banking. Thank you very much for coming.
So much,
and Dr. Austin Nweze, lecturer, Pan Atlantic University.
Thank you.
He's our go-to man when we also have banking, finance, and the economy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So that's our program. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition from 10:30 in the morning. I'm Yori Folarin. Bye-bye for now.